The game's the same. Whether this is your fourth intensive or this is your first. And it's about impact. It's about being a catalyst, a spark for impact in the world, in your life, in your world, with your family, with your friends, with your clients, if you have clients, with your customers, if you have customers, with your colleagues, if you have colleagues, with your fellow human beings, if you know you will have fellow human beings. So we've got that one, it's for everyone. But most of what we're going to be exploring over the next 3 days, 5 days, depending on how long you're here, is a 180 from the way that we have learned that we traditionally think about life and the game of life and living. And so there's a few things that I've learned that in their own way are like little mini 180s that are going to help you get the most out of this for yourself, but also then to be more impactful in the world. And the first one, woohoo, is to be more impactful. Be impacted. Now, that may or may not seem obvious, right? It is surprising how often a client will show up to me and they'll come in with a sort of a, all right, show me. I give you my money. Show me. What you got? Come on, change me if you're hard enough, right? And I'm always like, no. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I care for people, I'll care for you, but if you don't care, why should I? Like, if you're not here to be impacted, go home now. Like, clients will argue. Now, in fairness, I'm making it sound like clients are assholes. They're not. They sometimes appear that way at first, but no, they're not. It's just that they come in with a head full of noise, and anyone who's got a head full of noise can be a bit of an asshole. Right? And the idea is, apparently, that they're going to convince me why their shitty, miserable view of the world is the accurate one. And my idyllic, oh, it all sounds so lovely view of the world is crap. Now, I know something they don't know, or they usually haven't figured out. They paid me. So at some level, they already have an inkling that maybe there's something there. Like if they really thought it was crap, if they really thought they were right and I was wrong, they wouldn't be here. Like the fact that you're in this room, virtually or physically, means at some level, you have a sense there's something here for you. The people who didn't have a sense of that are the ones who aren't here. So there's a certain comfort that I have in that when I'm working with somebody. If they're there, they're probably actually interested, even if they're seeming like they're not. Now, what I'll often say when somebody argues convincingly with me, like, no, but you don't understand, this is what happened to me, and this is my situation, and this is why it's different for me, is, God, you'd better hope you lose this argument. Because if you're right and I'm wrong, you're right. Now, fortunately, it never works that way. Not because I'm so smart and I know so much. That'll be in the next 2 points. You'll see that it's not that. Actually, you might have seen that already. But because there is a kindness to the design of life that is invisible to most of us most of the time. It is not how the world has been taught to us. It is not how we have learned mostly to make sense of the world. And when people start to see that, they settle. Their thinking settles. Their body settles. It's like their body goes, oh, we can relax. Their mind relaxes. Their brain relaxes. Our brains, if you think about it, evolved to be hyper-vigilant for danger. Right? You're in a cave in Paleolithic times. And, what's the first thing you think before you head out of your cave for the day? What's the danger? right? Now, there are basically two mistakes you can make. You can not see danger and think it's safe when there is danger, or you can see danger even when it's not there. Now, the people who make the first mistake, we didn't evolve from them. They didn't make it. We evolved from the scared to shitless people, right? So it is normal that our brains are hyper-vigilant for danger. But the problem with that is it keeps our lives much smaller than they need to be. It keeps us much smaller than we are made to be. And so there's a fundamental discontent in most people most of the time. They know there's more. And their life is what they've figured out to do to try and get it. You know, there's a quote that I love. I tried to source it, and ultimately I've come up with the author unknown. But a ship is safest in harbor. But that's not what ships are made for. We're safest in our caves. But that's not why we're here. I don't think, now I'm going to try and make a distinction throughout our time together between Michael's opinions about life, the world according to Michael Neill, which Michael Neill thinks is really cool and you may or may not, and stuff that's just true about everybody regardless. This is a world according to Michael Neill thing, right? It really seems to me like we didn't come here to leave. We didn't incarnate to not live. We didn't show up on the planet to survive. Now, I don't know, I could be wrong. But it doesn't seem that way to me, because I notice that when people thrive, when they are more fully alive, life just seems to work better. It seems to work more as designed. Don't know this for a fact, but it's a working premise for our time together. Okay, so how do you do being impacted? Right? Well, there are really two things that will help you be more impacted, not just here, but anywhere. One is listen. Listen to be impacted. Don't listen for what, well, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't sound right. Oh, I know that's not right. Listen for what might be. Listen for difference. Listen for what isn't already the way you think about life. And in doing that, there's a chance you'll hear something new. It doesn't mean agree with it. It doesn't mean argue with it. It just means listen. If you listen, there is a real chance you will hear, particularly if what is being shared is true, as opposed to a personal point of view, a personal truth. Sid Banks, the Scottish mystic whose teaching was at the heart of the work that I do, he would say there's really two ways that people are impacted, that their level of consciousness rises, that their aliveness expands. And he said the first is hearing truth or seeing truth. Spiritual facts, things that just are. In the physical world, gravity is the example I'll often use, right? Gravity just is. Gravity does not give a shit about you individually or me. It just is. It's not there to mess you up. It's not there to lift you up. It's just there. So when we talk about spiritual facts, which we will over the course of our time together, that's the stuff that's just true. It's impersonal. Doesn't mean it's cold and unfeeling, but it is kind of unfeeling because it isn't personal. It just is. So listening for truth. He said the other is to find beautiful feelings. Truth always comes with a quiet mind and a beautiful feeling. Now that quiet mind may be in the midst of a chaotic situation. The beautiful feeling might not be like happy, 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 happy. The beautiful feeling often is just a sense of presence. Just a sense of stillness, a kind of a deeper awareness. But that's how you get impacted. You listen for truth. You listen for a deeper feeling. Now, the other thing that will prove very helpful is being willing to explore versus do research. So some of you spent time with me before know I like to talk about that, because doing research is, okay, so listen to be impacted, and I'm going to look through all my notes later and then think about it. Right? Exploring. I'm not saying you can't take notes. Please, feel free. I'm just saying if you're taking notes to look at it later, that's not exploring. If you're taking notes because it helps you be more present, which is what it does for me, take notes. But exploring is where it's at. I had a woman come on a couple of my trainings and be oddly impacted, not impacted, impacted, not impacted, impacted, not impacted. Like in the room, oh my God, you'd see light bulbs go on. You know, she had a very expressive visage. And then she'd go back to her life. Yeah, I don't know why I chose that word either, but it just came out. But then she'd go back to her life, and it was pretty shit. Like her circumstances did not improve at all, and her experience would kind of start to go back to how it was before. And so I said, look, let's have a chat, you and me, just, you know. And so she came round, and my wife loves orchids, so my office always has orchids in it. And I got an inkling that maybe the problem was that she'd been doing research. So in the room, it was like, oh yeah, this is great. And then she'd go away and think about it. And think about it, and think about it until what she was thinking about no longer had any resemblance to what had happened. Right? You know that experience where you just think something you think the life out of something. Right? It was like, God, this was great. Why do I hate it now? Right? Because you've been thinking about it too much. Right? Well, so it seemed to me she was doing that, and I was trying to find a way to distinguish exploring from research. And so I said to her, look at the orchid. And she said, oh yeah, I saw it when I came in. And I said, yeah, no, I get that. Look at the orchid, please. Now the orchid was over there. And she was like, why? I was like, because I'm asking, could you please look at the orchid? And she was like, I don't see why you, and I did. This is probably inappropriate, but I took her head in my hands and I did this. And she burst into tears. Not because I wrenched her neck. She burst into tears because she got it. She had cut herself off from an experience by thinking about experience. So to be impacted over the next few days, the two things that I know to tell you are listen as best you can and explore as best you can. I often tell people I'm not trying to get you to see what I see. I'm trying to get you to look where I look. Because if you look where I look, you'll see cool shit. And where we're looking is towards truth. Capital T, truth. The impersonal. The human. Make sense? Okay. So, second thing. All right. Okay. To learn how to do something, get a feel for how it works. So the simplest way that I know to think about that is, how many of you would consider yourself cooks, like decent cooks? Okay. And how many of you can sometimes follow a recipe? Okay. That's the difference. Right? Everyone comes to us looking for a recipe. How do I do this? How do I grow my business? How do I get healthier? How do I improve my relationships? How do I? Well, if you give them a recipe, they might be able to follow it, and it might work for them for a while. But if you teach them how to cook, if they get a feel for cooking, they're golden. Now, sometimes people say, but then they won't need me anymore. Yeah, that's a good thing, right? This is about being a catalyst, not a suck. I don't know what you'd call it, like a vampire. I don't know, like, I've got to keep my victims near me at all times. I remember hearing about a friend who went to see a therapist, and she was, let me qualify, she was a therapist being interviewed for a job in another therapist's practice. And she was kind of going insane trying to park, because there was just no parking anywhere. And she finally parked like 8 blocks away and was late and came in. And the first thing she said to the guy was, Jesus, is the parking always this bad? And he said, oh yeah. And she said, well, doesn't that piss people off? And he said, yeah, that gives us something to talk about each week. Like, it's not that. That's not what we're up to here. Okay? So it really is, once somebody has a feel for how it works, they'll come back because it's fun, right? Cooks do cooking classes, right? Because it's fun, not because, oh, I will never be able to cook my family a meal, right? It's like trying to learn how to cook for my wife is really, I do frustrate myself when I try to do that, because she just goes, you'll know. And I'm like, no, like how much? You just you'll know. And I'm like, no, I don't, because I don't have a feel for it yet. Now she's right. Once I get a feel for it, I will know. But job one is getting a feel for it. So as we explore things, there's a sort of a premature practicality that can get in your way. Yeah, but how do I? Yeah, but what if? What if this client says this on this day and too soon? Like the game is to start to get a feel for it. That's what the exploring will do. That's what the exercises that I'll ask you to do will do, is they'll help you start to get a feel for things. And once you get a feel for it, you're golden. Your feel will continue to refine over time. Your discernment will improve. What starts out looking like, how do I tell the difference between these 2 blades of grass, becomes, how do I tell the difference between this blade of grass and a lawnmower? Like, it becomes that difference. Things we say, well, that's subtle. No, it's subtle for you right now because you don't have as much of a feel for it as you will if you stay in the game. That's why the golden rule of this conversation that the only way I've seen people not get a tremendous amount from this conversation is if they drop out of the conversation before they get a tremendous amount from the conversation. It's there. But it's something you're going to get a feel for, and that's different to learning a recipe. So, not going to be many recipes. But man, we're going to do a lot of cooking. Okay? Make sense? Okay. Third one. To get better at the game of life. Now, I could say get more of a feel for how it works, and that would be accurate, right? That's true, and we'll talk about that. But here's what I got as the second half of this one. To get better at the game of life, spend more time being alive. Now, I get technically you're alive, right? Right? I do. I understand that. But you know the difference between technically being alive and being alive, right? You've got to feel for the difference on that one. When you're full of life, when you're thriving, when you're, it's expansive. It can be low key. It's not about being hyper. It's just about a feeling of aliveness. Joseph Campbell said that I don't think most people are really looking for the meaning of life. They're searching for the feeling of being alive. That's fundamental to being a life catalyst. is realizing that what people are really looking for is that sense of aliveness. And then that infuses into the game of life. Right? What's the game of life? All of it.